two, one. Welcome to the Breakthrough Emotional Eating podcast. My name is Kristen Jones, and thank you so much for joining me this week. Now, I've been talking about this for it's going on 5 months now. So if you've been listening to the podcast, you know that back in January, I started hormone replacement therapy and I didn't know anything. I didn't really honestly didn't even know what it was. I didn't know how it would help me. I had no clue about any of that stuff. I just knew that there wasn't something sitting right with me. I just didn't feel right in my body. There were a lot of things that were not working for me. I'm going to say 15 years of not getting a full night's sleep. Y'all, it's a long time. I had a long stretch of insomnia, very, very dry skin, vaginal dryness, all the things that come along with being in your mid to late 50s, and didn't really even think that there was anything that I could do about it because, in all honesty, my mom didn't do anything about it. So I didn't even know that this was an option. And whenever I talked to my doctors at Kaiser, I'm not throwing Kaiser under the bus, but my doctors at Kaiser, they just gave me estrogen cream and that was it. And so I didn't have any other point of reference. And the reason I have this amazing gentleman on my show today is because essentially, whether he knows it or not, he has ultimately changed my life. And my life is better since he has come into my life. So I am so honored to have on the podcast my hormone doctor, Dr. Peter Castillo, and he is from Swan Medical offices, and he works out of Northern California in the Bay Area. And they have two offices, one in Danville in my hometown and another in Los Gatos. Both of them are in Northern California. And the work that he's doing is just amazing. And I'm going to let him explain what he does. But the reason I felt it was so important to have him on the podcast is because I have a really strong suspicion that there are tens of thousands of women like myself who got through menopause. Didn't seem like it wasn't that, I want to say, earth-shattering. I didn't have hot flashes or anything like that, but I just didn't like how I was feeling. And I kind of became resolved that this was just the way my life was going to go for the rest of my life. And I think it's so important. And Dr. Castillo and I have had conversations about this, about how important it is to let women and men know that they have options and that it's not just you just have to put up with this. You just have to settle for this. There's so much more, and there's so many more things that you can do. And so that's the main reason why I wanted to have him on, is so we could talk about these things that a lot of times nobody talks about, and that it really is for everyone's benefit to really give you as much information as I can, and inform you as much with as many options, and give you all the options that you have out there, and then let you make the decision about what you want in your life and the direction that you want your life to go in. So without further ado, please, I would love to introduce all of you to my hormone doctor and my friend, Dr. Peter Castillo. So, Peter, thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. We're so happy that you're here.
Thank you so much, Kristen. It's truly an honor, and likewise, I think you've had an impact on my life because since we've met, you've convinced me that I need to do more yoga. You convinced me that I need to take better care of myself, and it's not uncommon to hear physicians don't always practice what they preach because
Mhm.
we're so busy thinking about how to take care of others. But that's not really an excuse. So
Right.
yes, I will see you this week in your yoga class.
Okay.
Um,
That that
um,
sounds good.
you're gonna have
I'll
to hold me to that.
I'll hold you to it. Exactly,
Yes.
exactly. So, if you could I would love for you to tell my listeners about kind of how you got into what you do, and actually explain to them what you do, what kind of a doctor you are, and what kind of practice you run, and the things that you do for women.
Sure, sure. Well, um, I think I have to. start it by saying that a lot of your story that you described, just not feeling right in your body, not having solutions being offered, and being told that, well, that's sort of normal. These are kind of the common things that I see as a urogynecologist because everything that I treat is a quality of life issue. It's
Hmm.
not a life-threatening issue. It's not a cancer. It's not an illness. It's not a disease state. It's aging and it's life events and childbirth and the consequences of such. But yet, menopause is never discussed.
Hmm.
And the one common theme that a lot of my patients have is that they're in the demographic that are most experiencing hormonal changes. So my patient demographic is typically, I mean, though it ranges from 18 to 98, the median range is 40 to 55.
Hmm.
And these are the patients that are perimenopausal, entering into menopause, that have not been informed of what's coming.
Hmm.
And so they have to figure it out on themselves. And the misconception is that if there's no symptoms, then you're okay.
Right.
And 80% of women will have hot flashes, night sweats, what we consider vasomotor symptoms. Those are withdrawal symptoms. They're not just a passing fancy. It's a truly a problem that is a signal for what's coming.
Hmm.
The withdrawal of estrogen leads to a whole host of symptoms. So 80% of women will have that. However, 20% won't. Though I call them the blessed because they're the ones who enter into menopause, stop having periods, and didn't suffer like others do. The misconception is that they're not going to suffer as a result.
Right.
The only difference is one had a parachute when they went into menopause and the other one did not.
Right.
And those withdrawal symptoms are hallmark to know what's coming. Those that didn't have those symptoms may not be aware of what's coming, and the downstream effects of those are things just aren't working. They don't
Hmm.
feel right. And because of the mantra of the lowest dose for the shortest duration of time is how we would administer hormone replacement therapy only if a patient is severely symptomatic, really leaves a whole host of patients untreated and
Hmm.
unaddressed.
Right. Well, and so I think the thing, and you and I talked about this in my first appointment, that and I'm gonna let you explain it because I know I did a podcast on it. So if y'all look back and I talked about in my podcast probably 3 or 4 months ago, I had no idea the impact on my body of the reduction and the reduction of the production of estrogen and testosterone in my body and 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 how it was impacting like major organs. And so to me, I was just blown away by that. So could you explain to that, and the way you explained it to me it made so much sense. So let you do that.
Sure, sure. And I have a tendency to get professorial when I start explaining this, but I'm just going to kind of explain it in a simple way
Hmm.
because I think one of the things that I really like to do for patients is explain things in a way that they understand
Right.
because it's not always so obvious.
Hmm.
So plants need water, they need
Right.
sunlight, they need nutrients. The body needs the same thing, just different nutrients.
Hmm.
And as long as those nutrients are around, you can live a long life. However, we were never designed to live as long as we are.
Hmm.
And proof of that is the ovarian cycle. Ovaries have a finite lifespan, meaning women are born with all the ova, eggs that you will have your entire life.
Hmm.
And every month you will cycle and sacrifice tens of thousands of eggs to generate one ova that is worthy to ovulate and potentially get pregnant.
Hmm.
Well, in the course of those 30 years, first 30 years, you lose the vast majority, over 80, 90% of those ova,
Hmm.
which case what's left are the ones that may or may not work. So the process of menopause is when you stop ovulating because there's no more viable ova. So that means by average age of 51, hormonal support goes to almost a net zero
Hmm.
very, very quickly. Stop ovulating, your estrogen production goes down to near zero, and it's not going to come back. You
Hmm.
can't jumpstart the ovaries. There's all kinds of ideas of using regenerative therapy to restart your ovaries, but that has not been demonstrated. And so just like plant life, if you don't get the nutrients or support, you will wither. And women's bodies, just like men's, have receptors for both sex hormones, estrogen and testosterone.
Hmm.
And estrogen, just as focus on that first, is what supports all of your connective tissue, your skin, your bones, your blood vessels, your heart. And wherever estrogen goes, it brings blood flow. So as long as there's estrogen and there's receptors to receive it, blood flow, angiogenesis, gets attracted to those areas and sustains tissues.
Hmm.
However, when you lose estrogen, those receptors are not being stimulated, blood flow decreases. Blood vessels are not attracted to the area, you lose blood flow. So all of the areas that are most dependent on blood flow, like the brain, like the skin, like the vagina and the bladder and nerve endings, without blood flow, there's no oxygen, there's no support for the nerve endings. Things change very quickly.
Right.
Um,
Y'all, he said your heart is impacted by that. And that's the part that just blew me away when you said, the heart and the brain both were being impacted by the reduction, and it wasn't something I was doing wrong. It was just a process of my aging. And I remember the thing I said to you was, why doesn't anybody know this? Like, why don't I know that just because of this aging process that it's not just the glamour stuff. This is like my heart. This is my actual heart, and my brain is actually deteriorating because of that reduction in those hormones that I didn't know I had any control over.
it's really unfortunate that we don't do enough education on this. And probably one of the reasons, and I think you asked this question earlier, is one of the reasons why did I get into this field? Why did I become focused on hormones? Is because there's just not enough education, particularly in women's health, on
Mhm.
what's to come. It's always wait till the shoe falls off and then address it, put a band-aid on it, fix it, and then move on, but never an explanation of why it happened in the first place, what can be done to prevent it? And if you can't prevent it, how do you address it and manage it moving forward?
Mhm.
Unfortunately, we've all fallen into this era of a black hole of information about hormone management for the last 22 years. And it's not until now that the buzzwords of menopause and perimenopause and and HRT and all these things are now floating around through social media because so much attention is now addressed, is bringing this.
Mhm.
But a lot of women suffered as a result,
Right.
and because of the lack of information. And then to make it worse, you know, practitioners, physicians, we're human. We learn and we apply. After years of doing the same thing over time, you stop learning. All of us have a tendency to do that unless you strive and push yourself to stay abreast of things.
Mhm.
But most of us, including my generation, were trained in an era where menopause was an optional thing to treat. It is something that is part of aging. You just let it go because we had this misconception that hormone replacement therapy was a bad thing
Mhm.
because of misinformation. It took 22 years to undo bad news, and that bad news was wrong. So
Mhm.
now all the attention is out because finally all the societies and everybody's on board. All the medical colleges are all on board. Menopause is an endocrine or a hormone insufficiency, no different than if it was your thyroid or
Mhm.
adrenals or anything. Having an insufficiency has to be addressed, otherwise you cannot survive.
Right.
So
Right.
now that the colleges are all on board, now everybody is talking about it, but it's still disorganized. And all those that are in my generation of training still think that estrogen causes cancer and bad things.
Right.
So dogma continues. Patients keep still getting dismissed or telling them that that's normal, it's part of aging. Oh, I can't give you estrogen because you're going to cause cancer, or you're too old, it's too late. All these myths, these incorrect statements, every single day is what I face when my patients come to see me after seeing three or four other providers
Mhm.
and finally coming to see us.
Right.
But so I digress, but a lot of the challenges, and I think it's always going to come back to my why.
Mhm.
My why has to do with how do I undo the past? How do I help people moving forward?
Right.
Whether through education, through lectures, through just one-on-one teaching,
Mhm.
because your success is going to help others,
Right.
right?
Right. Exactly. Well, and the funny thing is, so gosh, it was like 4 or 5 years ago. So this is funny, y'all, because I teach at a yoga studio in one town, not the town where I live in, but 5 years ago, I was in a locker room and a woman was talking about hormones, and and I was kind of like just kind of listening, not really paying much attention to what she was saying. But she said, she mentioned Dr. Castillo's name. I had no idea who he was, but I was like, huh. So I looked him up and I got on the computer, looked him up, and I see he has an office. Well, his office had just closed in the neighborhood, like in the area where I was, and it just had his office down in the South Bay, which is probably about an hour and a half away from where I live. And I was like, oh, that's too bad. And I kind of put it, just kind of like blew it off, didn't think about it. So then when I reconnect, the reason we came together, as Dr. Castillo made mention, is he is a member at the club where I teach yoga. And his wife took my class and wanted me to meet him, and we kind of all got together and talked about what I do and what they do. And in the process, when it was like, oh, what's the doctor, what's your husband's name? And she says, oh, Dr. Peter Castillo. And I said, oh my God, I've heard of him. So I mean, he has
Small
a
world.
stellar reputation of, and I think the thing that I think is so important, and this is something that I would want everyone, whether you live in my area or not, whether you could come and see him or not, I the bedside manner that his office does for their patients is so far superior to any interactions I've ever had in any kind of doctor patient setting that I've ever experienced. Their office, one, it's absolutely beautiful, but it's the people who work there are so caring. And when you call and you have a question or you have a concern or there's something you're not feeling right or we're not sure what, I don't, because there is an adjustment. I mean, there is an adjustment when and he and I talked very honestly about my numbers were so low. I mean, when he says like estrogen stops and you have none, that was me. I had none. I wasn't even measuring, it wasn't even measuring on the blood test that we did. Um, I knew there was going to be some adjustments that we were going to have to do. And so the one thing he told me was, here's what could happen. Here's a possible side effect. If this happens, not once was I told, you're just gonna have to ride that out. It'll go away eventually. He always told me, call the office, let me know what's happening, and we can make some adjustments. And every time that I have called with a question or with some sort of concern, it's either I'm put directly through to him or I'm put through to somebody else, but I'm responded to, and never am I told it's okay. You're just going to have to go with that. You're just going to have to ride that out. Because that was the one thing I didn't want to ever hear was I was going to have to ride something out because that's what I've been told before. And so it's I think that to me is something that I would want to tell anyone if you're looking for someone it, when it comes to this type of thing, when it comes to HRT and it comes to hormones, there is going to be adjustments, but you need an office. You need to find somebody who will listen and who will just hear you out and will actually empathize and work with you. And that's really what I just feel so blessed that I have this with you and with your office. Um, and and it seems like that's just the culture that you created in your office.
Thank you so much for saying that, Kristen. That really means a lot to me. It is something we strive to create. These are intimate concerns.
Hmm.
Every aspect of this journey through midlife and menopause impacts your life in an intimate way, whether it's with intimacy or intimate concerns that you have trouble speaking about because they're considered taboo or normal or because grandma had it, that's supposed to be normal.
Hmm.
There's a lot of things that just are just not discussed. So the reason why our practice is called intimate wellness is because it's all the intimate concerns that people hold tight to their chest. 30% of women will never bring up to their physician. Most don't even know, their partners may not know, or their families of members don't know, and they go through that silently.
Hmm.
And to take that burden off of them, to give them a safe place to share their concerns, to feel heard, to have options, and for them to make their own decisions on how they want to choose their health and
Hmm.
health care. That's really what we want to create. So it makes me so happy to hear what you just said.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I have so many friends who are getting services I have one person in particular who says, "Yeah, it's okay. I mean, I don't really like my doctor, but I mean, I'm going anyway." And I'm like, "No, that's not
Yeah.
okay. That's not it's not okay not to be heard." And I think that that's something as women we have to work on is we have to be okay. We have to be okay with advocating, and we have to find people that will listen. And so I want to tell everybody out there, whether you live in my area or not, there are doctors out there, there are people out there that are doing this kind of work, and that it is something that you can find somebody who will listen and who will empathize and actually be able to give you some really concrete next steps that you can take. So what would you say if someone is listening and they're like, everything that you're talking about, either the hot flashes or the dryness or, vaginal dryness, or just I'm not sleeping well, I don't feel right in my body, I've gained 20 pounds, all those things. I just don't know what to do. What would you say? What would be your first step for somebody? What would be somebody's first step to do?
Well, thing is, life is challenging, right? And we're very quick to assign um, uh, explanation for things. And we're human nature. We look for explanations for things so we can move past them and move on,
Hmm.
whether it's the right answer or not. We
Right.
we we just need something to hold on to just so we can keep moving because life doesn't wait for us.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, the misconception of menopause only happening at 51 is part of the problem, the way we define it.
Mm.
So before I explain what to do, is I want to explain why.
Right.
So menopause is really a two-phase problem,
Mm.
or a spectrum of a problem, if you will. Because remember, when you talked about your ovaries have a finite lifespan. They're responsible for producing 85% of your sex hormones.
Hmm.
That means your testosterone and your estrogen. 85% comes from the ovary, and they're made differently. Your ovaries have follicles, and you ovulate every month. That creates your estrogen cycle, which is why it's a cycle. It goes up and it comes down. It goes up
Hmm.
and comes down, and it's very rhythmic, 28-day cycle for most women. Um, Testosterone, however, is not produced in a cycle. It's produced on demand. You have
Mm.
baseline production from your adrenal glands that make up 15% of it, and that just keeps your performance hormone there, keeps your receptors alive and keep things working. But on command, whether you're being chased by lions, racing a marathon, or you're being aroused during will cause your ovaries to produce on demand a massive spike in testosterone.
Hmm.
Very similar to what your adrenal glands do under fight or flight,
Hmm.
right? So epinephrine and adrenaline go through the roof when you're under stress or under performance. Your testosterone does too, but from your ovaries. The ability to do that is dependent on the body of the ovary and how much of it is left. So as over the years, your ovaries are decreasing in size and capacity,
Hmm.
the ability to produce testosterone decreases by 50% between 30 and 40 years old.
See, that's what people don't understand. I mean, I think people think they're too young. Like, oh, I'm in my 30s. I don't need to worry about this.
That's exactly right, and that's where what I mean by the misconception about how menopause is defined is incorrect.
Hmm.
It starts in your between 30 and 40, you lose 50% of your production. Between 40 and 50, you're in that perimenopausal transition, which is why menopausal symptoms last 8 to 10 years.
Mm.
It's not just because estrogens changed. You may not even had fluctuations yet. Everything could be working fine with your ovulation.
So
However,
you could still be having a regular period, all those things.
that's right. Yet, because if you go to the doctor and say, I'm feeling this, I'm gaining weight, I've lost my memory, and I can't, my libido shot, I have no stamina. And they say, oh, you're fine. I'm not going to check your labs because you're not menopausal yet. The point is, you lost half of your support hormone, your
Mm.
performance hormone, which is testosterone. And testosterone behaves predominantly on the brain through performance, meaning memory, sleep, libido, drive, motivation. Um, Muscle mass, weight management, breast cancer protection. Testosterone has an enormous a role in the body, and when
Mhm.
you lose 50% of it, the 40s becomes hard, and we're quick to say, well, of course it's hard. Finances are hard, work is terrible, my kids are driving me crazy, my parents are getting older, so all the things start to build up,
Mhm.
but suddenly life didn't get harder. It's that we're getting weaker.
Right.
So that's the challenge. So why is it that we lose 50% of our testosterone at age between 30 and 40? And I always found this interesting. Evolutionarily, we were never meant to live this long. If you
Mm.
think from prehistoric times, what is it that prehistoric people needed to do? Procreate, forage for food, defend your tribe.
Mhm.
You need testosterone, adequate amount of testosterone, the ability to do that on command. By 30, you're no longer that person. You're not the
Right.
procreator, not the provider. You're the grandparent passing on information and history to your grandchildren. You're not that person. And then and then that's it. But now we're living to 85.
Mhm.
That means our performance hormone is gone from starting at 40 by 50%. Your ability to make the respond in the right way is lackluster. So that's why, on average, our patient average for our sexual dysfunction patients that come to see us is age 44.
Mm.
They don't even
Wow.
think they're menopausal. They just wonder, where did my orgasms go? Why
Mhm.
don't things feel the same?
Mhm.
Why am I feeling dryness? Where did I leave my keys? You know, it, it's
Yeah.
it's a whole host of symptoms that fall under that one problem. And this is
Right.
so predictable.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's sort of the challenge, is that we've misdefined it, we've misexplained it, or we didn't explain it, and patients continue to suffer in vain until they realize, like you, I don't know what's going on, but
Right.
I've got a long life to live and I've got a lot of stuff to do.
Mhm.
I can't be performing this way, and I've got to do something.
Right.
So unfortunately, it takes somebody to not accept dogma and question why the doctor said there's nothing that can be done, suck it up.
Right.
You really have to be a self-advocate. And that's what we try to do, is empower our patients through education so they can self-advocate for themselves. And we're here to give options.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, gosh, when you were talking, I was thinking about I couldn't make it through the afternoon without like needing a nap. I mean, I was so tired all the time. And I thought, I mean, part of that was because I wasn't sleeping, but also my energy was so low. And again, I just thought this was just how things were. This is just how it was going to be. And it's so different now. And it's so much better. And, but that performance piece, and again, I think that's such an important thing is that people in their 30s and 40s, especially women in their early 40s, they think, well, I'm too young. I'm too young to start going through this. There's nothing, I still have a period. So, and again, I think it's also because if you go to your general practitioner, that's usually what you're told is you if you have a period, you're still okay. You're still okay.
Yeah.
And that's and you know and there's nothing wrong. So I think that that is again, it's people not and women especially not accepting that and knowing that there are other options. And I think feel like healthcare has moved in that direction. Um, in the last probably 10 years that doctors have to they don't just get assigned people anymore. I think you that doctors have to they have to show up and I know and that's really what you and your office is doing is you are showing up and being there for people the way all doctors should and I think it's just people knowing that they can advocate for themselves and that they can get actually what they need. Um, what do you feel like is the role of fitness, activity, nutrition in hormone in when you start to see these changes? Because most people are like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired, I don't have any energy. I just I can't do any I couldn't start exercising now. I don't, all I want to do is eat carbs all the time, or all I want to do is eat sugar. What how does that impact? How does fitness and nutrition impact a person's hormones and their response to them?
Sure, sure. So, like I mentioned, 15% of your testosterone and estrogen will come from your adrenal glands, and you have some control over that. Meaning trying your best to have a low stress life, having time to meditate and exercise,
Hmm.
having time to really be you and take care of you.
Hmm.
That's very important. But in our hectic life, living in the Bay Area or in any metropolitan area these
Right.
days, it's you have to be burning the candle at both ends. Otherwise, you're not a productive member of the society.
Hmm.
And it's unfortunate that that's the life we live. Well, you will sacrifice something in exchange for that. So that 15% goes down very quickly to very small numbers.
Right.
So taking care of yourself is first.
Hmm.
Proper nutrition, proper exercise, proper rest are necessary for everything to work well. You still got to do the hard work though. And
Hmm.
you remind me of that all the time. You got to do the hard work. It's not just about going to the gym and lifting weights, not just about getting on the treadmill, but also, maintaining flexibility,
Hmm.
maintaining those small muscle groups are key. Now, you can increase baseline production through exercise, through weight training, um, proper nutrition.
Hmm.
But to what degree when our production, natural production, is declining?
Right.
So continue doing them. Oftentimes, it's not enough to replace what's been lost.
Right. Right.
And then the challenge becomes is that, well, if you don't have the interest, how do you get out of the house? If you
Hmm.
don't have the motivation to do it,
Right.
which is where the testosterone part becomes a big impact. It's truly a motivating hormone
Hmm.
that stabilizes moods and and you have by default a positive outlook on anything you want to do. Um, Mood is a big part of the testosterone purpose. So it's a mood stabilizer. And the challenges that come at us every day when we're weak seem overwhelming. Where I guess overwhelmed is probably the best word that
Hmm.
many people will feel because they can't keep up with all the things that are coming at them,
Right.
and they don't have the energy to overcome them. Um, Imagine if you could slow the world down and all of a sudden all these millions of things that are coming at you, you can actually see calmly and see them in a logical sense. You can address them. That's
Hmm.
sort of what happens when you optimize your testosterone levels
Right.
to stabilize your mood, and the world becomes more manageable. It's no
Right.
longer overwhelming, and now you can be so much more productive when the lights are brighter and everything's
Right.
clearer.
Right. Right. And so, and I think that that again is something that, if you're listening to this and that is you, or you think, gosh, I feel like there's so many things that are coming at me and I just don't know I don't know how to handle them. And I used to be able to deal with stuff, but now I feel like I can't. It's not that I think, and I think we as women especially, we just turn the blame on ourselves. Well, there must be something I'm not trying hard enough. I'm not doing enough. And there
Yeah.
is and can be a legitimate reason. And if you're in your 30s and 40s, that legitimate reason could be it could be and probably is your testosterone levels. And
Yeah.
so knowing that, we have to stop turning on ourselves and blaming ourselves and realizing that, oh, there could be a medical reason for this happening. And I need to investigate that and I need to figure out. And yes, you can go and ask your general practitioner, but that probably won't get you anywhere. So you may need to find someone like Dr. Castillo, who does these things. And it's unfortunate that, and I don't necessarily want to have to put you on the spot about insurance, but we have talked about that every essentially, and as you and I talked about, everyone needs this. Everyone is going to go through this, and in my mind, that's why our major carriers don't cover this because everybody needs it, and it's going to be expensive for them.
So there's something I always like to remind myself of and patients
Hmm.
about their own providers.
Hmm.
Their providers truly do care about them.
Hmm.
They actually want the best for them. It's because they don't know what they don't know,
Right.
and it's by no fault of their own unless they actually make the time to go out of their way to learn something that is so novel and unique to
Hmm.
them.
Right.
And once you're established in practice, it's harder and harder to do that.
Right.
But it's truly their best intention. So it's never my intention to get in between the patient and their doctor. In
Right.
fact, I would rather speak with, or educate the physician on on the why. And
Hmm.
some are very open, some are not,
Right.
and that's okay.
Yeah.
But at least I've shown the patient, or at least I've educated the patient enough that they can at least speak to them and they can advocate for themselves about
Right.
what they want.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely. Absolutely.
the other,
Oh, go ahead.
the other challenge is how, and you know how the FDA oversees all production of commercially available medications.
Hmm.
It's a very hard job, and it's what they do. And I do want to give them credit because what they do is, in their intent, is to protect the public
Hmm.
from just nilly-willy medication showing up on the market and
Right.
then people getting sick or hurt. So without proof of evidence or anything. So that's their primary role, their role. However, because they are rule followers, they can only do things in the order that they were done. So, for example, when medications become FDA approved, the manufacturer, the pharma, has to submit a protocol that identifies a demographic, a narrow range, a fixed dose or series of doses, and strict guidelines in which to follow, which means that a lot of medications become focused on a particular demographic or a particular gender. And sex hormones like testosterone and estrogen are genderized because testosterone, when it came to market, was studied in men
Hmm.
because that's where they wanted it to be because that's the deficiency they were trying to address without understanding that women have that deficiency also.
Mm.
Men need estrogen just as well.
Yeah.
But there's no estrogen replacement for men because they will make their own if you replace their testosterone.
Mm.
However, the contrary is not the same for women because there is no FDA approved testosterone for women in this country. And that's because the FDA is very strict and they shoot down things for unknown reason.
Hmm.
Anyway, other countries have FDA approved versions of, or not FDA approved in their countries, but they have commercially available testosterone for women.
Hmm.
And I've predicted that within the next 10 to 15 years, we should have a female commercially available testosterone.
Mm.
The FDA is like a massive ship that takes a long time to turn. So
Right.
it's going to take a while before that becomes available. So unfortunately, it becomes an off-label medication, meaning
Right.
there's no FDA indication for it. Anything that wasn't studied in that population or for a condition becomes off-label, which
Mm.
means insurances are not in a rush to cover it.
Right.
So that's why, unfortunately, if you manage to get your insurance to cover it, it's gonna be a sort of a generic approach,
Hmm.
a minimalist approach to replacement. They'll say, well, let's take a male's prescription, divide it by tenths, and you're going to take that tenth of a pea size amount and you're going to apply that to you. How much are you really getting? Who
Right.
knows?
Hmm.
How much got absorbed? Who knows? And how much is actually doing work in your body? Who knows? Because they're not checking labs beforehand or afterwards because they don't know what to do with the information.
Hmm.
So, but there are ways of getting your doctor to prescribe that. Sometimes insurance will cover it. Many times they won't because there's no indication for women to have testosterone according to insurance companies, the way they see it.
It's wild. That is
Right.
just wild. Um, but
It is a mess.
I think it's again, I think it's really it's fortunate that there are people, there are practitioners like yourself who have become who are educated in this area, and and the word, the word is spreading. I know that one of my clients from Pennsylvania reached out to speak to your office, and she ended up finding someone in her area, immediately in her area, that she didn't even know that person existed, but
Mhm.
because she learned, because I had talked to her about it, and she called your office, and she talked to she talked to I think it was Jessica. She talked to, somebody at your office,
Mhm.
and got the information, and then was able to find somebody in her area. So they are out there, and it's just, we get to know that we have options, and that's really what, I just want people to know, is that the options are out there, and that we don't have to settle. Just I think you said, I believe, if I say this correctly, I'm not, I don't think I'm going to, but I think you were saying that something about, it's not enough just to not be in disease, that like that's not a quality of life. Like, just
Right.
because you're not sick, that doesn't, that's not living.
It's true. It's true. We measure health by whether you're sick or not.
Yeah.
And it's not enough to not be sick,
Yeah.
is really the way I look at it, because there's a lot of healthy people out
Hmm.
there. but they're vitamin D deficient, their B12s are malabsorbed, their hormones are deficient, their cortisol through the roof. They can't sleep, but yet they're healthy because they don't have a disease that can be treated by a pill.
Right.
They have aging, they have hormone deficiencies, but who's measuring those appropriately?
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. I agree 100%. I think people nowadays, since COVID, they've found that there's an upswing in the amount of people interested in their longevity.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think one thing that COVID taught us is we are not immortal, and it brought
Right.
us to face our mortality.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people started to take control of their own health decisions
Right.
and not just looking at where insurance sends you and not just looking
Mm-hmm.
within your network, but looking for the right person that fits you. It
Right.
has because every practitioner has their own style and personality, and so do patients, and they have to
Mhm.
fit, they have to jive, and they have to understand each other
Right.
in
Right.
order to have
What
respect
is
there.
can you share and what is the most gratifying part of your job?
Oh, there's so many. So as a urogynecologist, my focus has always been on quality of life issues, but pelvic floor issues,
Mm-hmm.
incontinence, prolapse, complications from childbirth or congenital malformations. To fix those things was extremely gratifying because not too many people can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And they were oftentimes just told that they got to live with it and deal with it. But to have somebody get back to their normal activity, be able to run and jump with their kids, be able to have the activities they want to do, that was very gratifying. I thought that was the best it could be.
Mm-hmm.
Once I realized that the root cause behind a lot of the things that I treat as a urogynecologist has to do with the aging process and loss of hormonal support, and
Mm-hmm.
I started treating hormones, to first started with sexual dysfunction. And then when I found the root cause being hormonal insufficiencies and normal biologic aging and the consequence of that was impacting all these things, that's when truly I see joy in every single patient I see now
Mm-hmm.
because they're happy, they're energetic, they're smiling, their
Right.
their couples, their relationships are tighter, their performance at work is better.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I can't, I don't need kudos. I don't need any of it. I just know I go home happy with that.
Yeah.
To know. And the fact that they will tell their friend that lives out of the country. They'll tell their
Mm-hmm.
friend that lives on the East Coast. And sometimes they call me and I say, well, you know what? I happen to know somebody that's about 100 miles away from you
Right.
that I can vouch for. And we'll send them there.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I think it's hard to say one thing, but just to know that I don't know, just to know that I can improve patients' quality of life through really education and giving them good options.
Okay. That's awesome. Great. What would and so it what would what would be one thing that you would like to leave the listeners with? What one either one piece of information or one piece of guidance or advice that you could give a woman out there who is experiencing these, either in their 30s, their 40s, they're experiencing these symptoms. What's what's something that you would want them to know? What's something you'd want them to know?
That um, because of lack of information and education for women and for physicians alike, many of the patients that are going to enter into menopause and perimenopause, they're going to feel unheard.
Hmm.
Um, there's several resources that I can share with you that you can pass along,
Perfect. Okay.
so that they can educate themselves and so that they have the verbiage and the knowledge to be able to be able to discuss with their primary care. But one of the things that I've learned to shed is don't accept and no is no for an answer.
Hmm.
Always advocate for yourself, and don't allow the medical gaslighting just because they don't know what they don't know,
Hmm.
to be your solution because unfortunately too many people do that and they
Right.
just accept it because they feel that, well, we know best. Well, we don't always know best.
Hmm.
um, so advocate for yourself, kind of um, know what it is that you want.
Hmm.
What do you want out of your life? You're 45 years old. You have career goals, you have family goals, you have financial goals, whatever those may be. This is not the time to just accept weakness and
Right.
not the time to to accept, that the good that's as good as going to get.
Hmm.
This is probably what I consider the 50s and new 30s should be the peak of many women's careers.
Right.
And if you think about it, just from in the highest, most established women in executive boards and in large companies are in their 50s.
Right.
They're probably the most valuable person for that company.
Hmm.
To lose them because there's no accommodations or because they can't would be a shame.
Right.
So this is always such a hard question to answer, but I think um, really just advocate for yourself, realize that there can be better, and if you're not getting the answer, look elsewhere.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I hope, I know that the information that you provided, I know has been so valuable for so many people who are listening. And for anyone who, if you're in that situation, please, I will absolutely in the show notes have the resources that Dr. Castillo will pass on to me that will be able to give you some information and some education about and the verbiage to use when you speak to your own primary care doctor. But just know that there's help out there. And there are many other doctors all across the country who are doing this kind of thing. And
There
that
really is.
again, as he said, don't settle for no and know what you want and don't stop until you get answers and you get what you want. So that's a great piece of advice for any women, for any person. I mean, that's just where the
Sure.
way we should all live our lives. So,
Sure.
thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I'm so happy that we had this conversation, and I just always, I mean, I want to tell everybody about you because I'm just
Hmm.
like I say, you've changed my life. So, that just makes me. It makes me so happy to be able to share this information with so many people and to allow you to be able to have the impact on other people's lives that you had on my life. So thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Kristen. I'm honored to be able to help.
Absolutely. All right, y'all. We will be back next week. I will have all of Dr. Castillo's resources in the show notes. And again, if you have any questions about anything, you can reach out to me. You can add a comment to this podcast episode. If you're watching it on YouTube, you can add a comment. I will get those. I will respond to you. And if you need to connect with him, I'll give his contact information also in not only in the show notes, but also in the description on my YouTube channel as well. All right. Have an amazing, amazing week, everybody. And remember, advocate for yourself and your life. Just being sick is not good enough. We can be healthy and we can thrive and we can continue to live amazing lives well past menopause. So again, thank you so much for joining me this week and listening to the podcast, and we'll see you all next week. All right, take care.